Hi, I'm Ashley Salaya Dow here with Balanced Body. We're bringing you a fun foot warm-up using Joe's toe gizmo. So go ahead, grab your gizmo and join along. Hi there. So go ahead, grab your gizmo, your toe gizmo. Now remember, there's two different resistance settings. The red one, a little bit lighter. The black one's a little bit heavier. So please feel free to play between the two to see which one works best for you. Maybe at certain points, the lighter version ends up being too light and you want to work a little bit heavier, then you have the second option here. I'm going to be using the lighter version. So with the two straps, we're going to place them around your big toes. Now play with your positioning on your toes. A little bit lower down into the crease of your toes will give you certain feedback. If you come up a little bit more mid-toe or towards the top of the toe, it's actually going to make it a little bit harder. So you can start and position and play with that as well to adjust your resistance. I'm going to be about halfway, kind of right on my toe knuckle. And we'll start seated. Now, if being in a seated position with your legs fully extended, if that's too much on the hamstrings or your lower back, you can prop yourself up on a yoga block, a moon box, maybe a cushion or two. So if this is too much for you, or you can bend your knees a little bit. Now, with your feet, all we're going to start with is a little bit of resistance, just pushing the feet open, finding that resistance in the gizmo, and then back to center. A little press open and back to center. And now as you're playing with your resistance, you're playing maybe with the location as well, and see how that gives you different feedback into our feet, into those arch muscles, ankles, hips, maybe even up into your core if you're getting any feedback up in there. Do just a couple more where you press open and in. And then when you come back here, we're going to find just a little bit of resistance. The spring is slightly open. With that slight open resistance, we're going to move through your ankles into a pointed position and then back into a flexed position. A little plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. See if you can keep that same resistance the whole time you're working through the feet. Pointing down and away, flexing and pulling back. Now, if that's feeling pretty easy and you want to give yourself a little bit more resistance, you can pull the feet a little bit wider. Now, with this pointing and flexing motion, let's articulate it just a little bit deeper, a little bit more. When you go back into that flexed position, can you first start with the toes? Then the balls of the feet pull back and really reach through those heels, maybe get a little stretch through the back line of your legs. When you do the reverse, reach through the heels, push through the balls of the feet, and finally the toes. Working through those feet the way we would in an articulated spine. I like the visual of imagining that my foot actually has a spine and I'm working through, I call them your foot vertebrae. Not anatomically correct, but we can envision it, we can imagine it. We'll do a couple more. And then what would happen here if we took this more into a prance-like motion where we do one foot at a time? One foot pulls back while one foot stays pointed, and then switch. Now you might notice that the gizmo kind of moves here. It tends to drop more down towards the crevice of my toes. You can adjust and stop and take a moment if you need to. Now just kind of working through one foot pointed, one foot flexed. What would happen if you then articulate one foot at a time? Toe ball heel, heel ball toe. Toe ball heel, heel ball toe. Hopefully by now we're starting to build some heat through the shins, through the ankles, down in through the feet. We'll do this a couple more times side to side. And then as you come back to center, now we're going to take some circles. If you need to take a moment to relax the shins, to relax the ankles, if you would like to readjust your placement. Now with your ankles, we'll be drawing the circles here. You can start down through center, open around to the sides and come back to center. Or if you want to reverse that direction first, pick which direction works best for you to start with. And now the wider you pull those feet, the more tension you'll find. So if going too wide is too much, you can limit your range. Just do one more in your direction, and then up at the top, go ahead and reverse. Pulling wide, down to center, and back up the middle. If you can, try to keep tension in the springs the whole time. This direction for me is a little bit harder to keep the resistance in the spring. After you feel like you've done an even amount of circles in both directions, take a moment, if you would like to take this off and shake out your feet, because we're going to take this whole version and take it to a standing position. Now, when you come standing, we'll place this, again, if you want it down into the crevice of the toes, through the midline, or towards the tip of the toe, you can play with and adjust that as well. Now again, remember, if you want to keep it on the lighter setting, you have your heavier setting if you wish to use that one. I'm going to place it back halfway through my toes, kind of right around the joint. Now remember, you can go a little bit closer down towards the crevice of your toes, more towards the tip of the toe, kind of what feels best for you. That one doesn't nearly feel right. There we go. Now with your gizmo around your toes, stand just a little bit wider so you're in a little bit of resistance. We're going to go through a very similar series of movement pattern than what we just did seated. Now we'll start with just a little knee bend, a little bit of a squat. If you're a dancer, we call them plies. Wherever you would like your hands, kind of typical is here on the hips, maybe down beside you. Now again, we want to try to keep a little bit of resistance as we're going through your squat. So essentially that same flexed position that we did when we were in our seated position. Now from here, after your last one, we'll take this into your pointed position or your plantar flexed by slightly rocking forward into your toes, coming up onto the toes, lifting your heels, and then with control, lower back down. A little rise up onto those toes, and then a lower down. Now, if you need some assistance, you can grab a counter if you're at home. If you have a foam roller, you can use that for some balance support, maybe the back of a chair or your couch. Now let's go between the two. If we take a knee bend, a little squat, standing tall, and then a rise up onto those toes. Oops, try to keep your balance, and lower. We'll try that again. A little bend of the knees, and stretch, a little rise up, and down. Now, clearly you can see I was having a hard time keeping my balance. Might be the same for you at home. If this is enough, just going through the bend and the rise, continue exactly as you are. Let me get that last rise in there. Now, if you would like to use that same articulation, the rolling through your feet that we did seated, a movement pattern that we can take here is if you go down into your squat, try to stay at that same height with your torso, lift the heels without changing your height. Now keep those heels frozen in space as you straighten the legs, lower back down. Bend those knees into your squat, lift the heels without changing height, lift up tall, then lower the legs, or the heels, excuse me. One more, bend those knees, roll up through your feet, straighten the legs, and lower the heels. Now that we have that version, let's reverse it. You first start by rising up tall onto your toes. Bend those knees without dropping your heels, then lower the heels and straighten your legs. Two more in that direction. Rise up tall first, bend the knees, lower your heels, and stretch your legs. One more, articulating through your feet, through your ankles, lower, and stretch. Now from our seated version, we also had our prancing where one foot was going at a time. Same thing we'll do here. You're just gonna lift one heel up nice and high, lower, and switch. And switch. Now hopefully our spring in our gizmo is still slightly open, giving us just a little bit of resistance, building those muscles through our inner arch, through your feet, up through that midline of your body. A couple more times side to side. And again, if you need to hold on with both hands, one hand, maybe no hands. Now the last version, this gets a little tricky standing. We had our circles when we were seated on the floor. In our standing version, this will be more of like a sweeping action. And we're gonna go in both directions. So again, wherever you would like your hands, holding on for balance onto your waistline. The feet, we're gonna draw little sweeps out, up, and center. Now the range here is a little bit more limited. Your carpet or wherever you're standing might be a little sticky. It's harder to keep the spring resistance here in a standing position just because your range is slightly limited with the floor. Now let's see if you can reverse the direction, sweeping up open and around. It helps my brain if I do it with my hands. If you need hands for balance, you can keep them wherever they're at. Do a couple more sweeps in your reverse direction. And when you feel like you've done an even amount to both directions, go ahead, take that gizmo off your toes. Take a little shake out of those feet if you need to. And then I just want you to notice, if you stand in a parallel position, how your feet feel from the very beginning of our video, of our little toe workout, our foot workout, till now. Does the inner arch, your feet, your ankles, even up through the calves and the legs, does anything feel a little bit more active? Maybe a little bit more heat? Maybe a little bit more ready now to go onto the reformer or onto your chair, even your tower, your Cadillac, to go into footwork, feet and straps, any of your lunge series. So hopefully you found this helpful and you enjoyed working with your gizmo. We will see you next time.